Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Becky Megas, she, her pronouns, and I am the founder and chief care connector for Women in Sustainability. And thank you for joining us as part of our Community Voices series. Today, this is an opportunity for our members to present on a topic that is around their expertise. Women in Sustainability, for those who are new to us, is an inclusive social and environmental justice nonprofit that is dedicated to caring for the people that care for the planet through community advocacy, resources, and education to create a sustainable and equitable future through the feminist viewpoint and feminist leadership. Women in Sustainability strives to create a safe space for like-minded and diverse individuals to create purposeful connections and conversations. All are welcome in our community. So Megan is joining us today. She is the founder of Conscious Impact Financial Planning, a financial wellness and socially responsible investment firm. Megan has spent the last 13 years conducting financial life planning, counseling, and education, and is dedicated to empowering others to transform their finances into personal advocacy. She received a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from Franklin University and Master of Science in Family Financial Planning from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. When Megan is not working, she volunteers for the financial advocacy movement, which provides free financial counseling, financial planning, and tax preparation to those who need it most. Her remaining personal time is dedicated to her spouse, rescue dog, and their many travels around the world. Please help me give a warm Women in Sustainability welcome to Megan.
Late.
I was like, I stopped. I was like, is I didn't ask. I say late or late, but thank you.
Late. It's simple. It's the simplest of all the last names I've ever had, I'll admit. But yeah, so the first thing that I'd like to do today is readdress awareness and talk about participation. So when you showed up today's webinar, we've been doing webinars for several years now. You probably kind of have a certain way you approach it. You'll be on camera, off camera. You might have something else going on in the background. But either way, you've come with a certain expectation of how this webinar is going to go. And so it's very unlikely that you came to this webinar and thought to yourself, you know what? This webinar, this education, this is going to change my life. And I'm not saying it is going to change your life. What I am saying is I would like you to be aware that you probably didn't show up today thinking about that. And this entire conversation that we're going to have today is about how we approach our thoughts. So if we want to give ourselves the opportunity to have this presentation affect our life, we have to be open to participating. So the more that you participate, the more that you're going to get out of this presentation. So if you did the impact persona, you'll be able to apply some of these very specific things to you. Also, if you participate in the chat or in any way that you want to show up, it's going to be more likely that this time that you're spending here, this very valuable time, will actually have a rate of investment, a rate of return for you. So I encourage you to participate. Second, transparency. So I am a fiduciary. I have signed a fiduciary oath. And so transparency is very, very important to me. So I want you to know who I am, what my firm is about, what we represent, and why we're here in the first place. So I own Conscious Impact Financial Planning. It is a socially responsible investment firm. And basically we help, it rhymes now and I have to remember the rhyme, mission-driven millennial women, right? So mission-driven millennial women, women who want to see their impact in the world and want to use their finances to be that catalyst. So that's what we do in our normal day-to-day, but what we're going to talk about today is not going to be really about that. The Money Mindfulness webinar is actually the masterclass for the financial wellness program that we have created in partnership with the nonprofit, the Financial Advocacy Movement. So this is the core of the financial wellness program that we do with them. So if you're interested in anything you hear about today, or if perhaps you would like to learn how to bring this in your own community, I'll be happy to hook you up with Derek and kind of give you that information so that you can use this and this can be a contagious event. So I also want to mention that I and my firm, we do not sell insurance. I'm going to be very passionate about talking about insurance today, and you might think that because of the way that I approach it, that I might have some incentive. But we don't sell insurance. We'll be happy to refer you if you do need it. But we are fee only, so we are actually looking out for just their client. They're the only one who pays us. We don't get commissions. So I want to be perfectly clear that we're not here to try to sell you anything or be misleading in any way. Okay, so next, about me personally, when I can figure out how to get the slide to move. There we go. Perfect, me. So why should you be listening to me anyway, right? Who am I to you? And so, you know, Becky did a really good job introducing me. I have a bunch of education. I have a bunch of licenses, right? I've Bachelor of Science, Master's of Science, you know, AFC, EA, CFP, it's all a bunch of acronyms. And based on societal standards, these are the things that someone should have when they're an expert. And that's great. I've done everything. But here's the thing. I started learning and going on my own educational journey because I was trying to solve my own problems. And so I did. I got all the education, I got all the licenses, and I still wasn't where I wanted to be. But what had happened was I got every other factor out of the way, like anything else that could contribute. And the only thing that was left was me. So I knew all the financial techniques and strategies and everything. So the only thing that was holding me back was myself. And it was this journey where I figured out that it wasn't about what I knew or how to apply it, but it was about the behaviors that I was exhibiting and the scripts that I was telling myself. That's what started this financial wellness program, this financial wellness masterclass. So my expertise, though vast, doesn't have any bearing on this. This is actually something that I have experienced. And that's why I think I'm a better candidate for this presentation than someone who has all my qualities and education. So who are you really? And this is what I think mindfulness gets to the core of, right? If you took the impact persona quiz, you have an inkling of the things that you care about. Is it the environment? Is it social issues, feminism, social justice, environmental justice? Maybe you have certain views on guns or alcohol or gambling. Maybe you have religious views. But all of those things, they add up to who you are, really. And ultimately, I think as humans, what we really strive for is authenticity. Now, that authenticity could be labeled good or bad, or we can put a bunch of things on it, a bunch of judgments on it, right? But ultimately, we feel most comfortable when we are most authentic. And we want to be most authentic, but sometimes life, it gets in the way. We have expectations, especially societal ones, about how to behave, going to work, everything that we're supposed to do to have a meaningful life. But ultimately, we don't spend a lot of time actually confirming that for ourselves. So it's really important. Who am I really? What would I want my obituary to say about me? And if I died right now, would someone write that obituary that would reflect the things I want said? Am I behaving in a way where it's outwardly apparent that someone would be able to capture that in my obituary? And if not, is there something I'm going to do about it? You don't have to do anything about it. You can leave things as they are, but you're either going to have to change your behavior or your expectations to get what you really want. So it comes down to, are you going to take the time to really think about what you want your life to look like? Because I'll tell you what, the rest of this presentation won't matter if you don't know what your life looks like. I'm a financial planner, and I can do rates of returns and the PE ratios. I can give you all the mathy, nerdy stuff. But all of it is numbers, and numbers don't really mean anything to you as a human being, right? If you got a piece of fiat currency, like the dollar bill, right? It stands for something else. It is by itself a beautiful cotton blend toilet paper, but it's a symbol or a substitute for something else that you want. That something else could be safety, security, it could be adventure, it could be a myriad of things. But if we don't know what it is we want in our life, it doesn't matter what our financial plan is. We can have all of the financial wealth we want, but we will not have financial wellness without understanding what it is that we truly are and what we truly want. So what would you like your legacy to be, right? You do need to decide that. And you do need to figure out what that will look like to start making it look outward, right? How are other people going to actually see that your actions are changing things, right? So are you going to change your behavior or your expectations if you're not meeting the expectations that you have of your life, right? Or the authenticity that you want to hold yourself accountable to. And so how can we be mindful to disconnect? Well, things like this, just, taking time out of your day, really reflecting. Also, just journaling. I know you hear it from everybody. Journaling is great. It's a great thing for self-reflection. But here's the thing is, with money scripts and things that we tell ourselves, we're not going to acknowledge them with the right kind of approach if we don't spend time thinking about it. So we'll move on to how we do that. So first, let's talk about mindfulness. What is it? How do we examine and how do we reflect? So mindfulness, and I want to read it from slide, is knowing what is happening while it is happening without preference or without judgment, right? We get a lot of messages about how we should spend our money. We should have safety and security for our family, buy a home. We shouldn't spend it on coffee or avocado toast, or we shouldn't, we should or we shouldn't. We should on each other a lot with money. Let's put it this way. We tell each other what's right or wrong or good or bad. But ultimately, it's how you want to spend it. So I've lived a lot of places in my life, and one of them was Japan. And so when I lived in Japan, my sushi budget was a car payment. It was that much. But I am 6'1" and 220 pounds. So I literally don't fit anywhere in Asia, like nothing. I couldn't buy anything. And sushi was one of the few ways that I felt actually culturally included. So I knew that that's what I wanted to spend my money on. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to judge myself for that simply because society would have. What does matter is your opportunity cost, which we will get into a little bit later, because that's the mindfulness part of it. So what is money mindfulness? And I've already started talking about this. Money mindfulness, being aware of the way that you're spending without judging it, understanding why you're doing it, because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to participate in the culture, right? Or I want to spend my money in ways that I want to see reflected in my life. That could be spending money on family, vacations, that sort of thing. It may seem frivolous, but ultimately, when your life flashes before your eyes at the end of your life, you want that to be a terrific movie, right? In my case, I'm hoping it's going to be a musical. We're working on that though. But yeah, you really want to have intentionality about when you're going to spend your money, right? And so the difference between money mindfulness and a budget is about reflection, right? So budgets, you always hear about them, right? Everyone wants to talk about a budget. I personally hate the entire concept of budgets, though I understand they have a place, which is why they exist. But a budget is a wish list. Like, it never actually comes to pass. It's a great intention. Like, if everything were absolutely perfect, this is how my finances would look. But they never look that way. Never, ever. So for me, a budget is not as good of a tool as reflection can be. And so with reflection, you can do something as simple as saving your receipts. That's like low-level intentionality, just looking at how you're spending, but actually figuring out why. So for me, that sushi, I did it to fit in, to be culturally accepted. When you spend your money, it could be an array of things. It could be to help yourself to something that was convenient, right? Is this eating out is just going to save me for the day, and I can work on other things. So it could be convenience. It could be societal or cultural expectations. Like for me, baby showers, that is definitely a cultural expectation where I would not necessarily spend money of my own accord, right? Maybe it's to fix unexpected problems, but what you're noticing is that you always seem to have unexpected problems. And what is the issue with not having the expectations of those problems, right? Not planning for them if they seem to be happening so frequently. There's 2 or 3 more, but there's several other things that you can just examine, and your reasons can be unique. These are just some very common ones. There's another one for things that are on sale, right? Time sensitive discounts. Sometimes I'll spend money on things just because it was on sale, not because I needed it, but I might need it later. And if I needed it later, it would have been nice if I had got it for cheaper, which is a very, very twisty logic to get me to buy something I didn't need, right? But I have to recognize that that's what happens. And as long as I recognize it and I acknowledge it, that's fine. I don't have to go through some shame spiral. It's done. I just have to know that that's what I did. And so when I am in need of that money, or I wonder where my money had spent, at least I'm aware, because ultimately awareness is more important than those other things in budgeting and spending plans and finance, right? Just knowing how you're spending, because ultimately you need to be spending that money. I don't think taking it to the grave with you is going to do very much for you. But deciding when to spend it is the most important part. So, what money scripts are you telling yourself? And they can be different. So for instance, two people who are in poverty may respond very differently when they grow up to money and saving and spending. So one person might think, I never had enough growing up, and they save and save and they never spend anything because they always feel like there might be something around the corner that will put them back in that place, and they're terrified, right? So they don't spend any money and they're a spendthrift. Another person who grew up in poverty might spend at every opportunity because they feel like they're always going to be in that situation, and they might as well spend it while they have it, or they might as well spend it and get at least a little bit of reprieve from the kind of hell that they're going through, right? But it's the same event, but your scripts and the things that you're talking to yourself about when you're doing money habits, they're different for everybody, and you need to pay attention to them if you do want to change them. Now, if you're happy with exactly how everything's going in your life and how you're spending, then you don't have to change anything at all. But I don't know how. I mean, I might be one of the few people I know who's at that place, but I've been practicing this intentionality for a long time. So I don't know anyone who doesn't want to adjust even a little bit, right? And so we'll talk about right now a little bit about how we're going to start making those micro decisions. Oh, excuse me. We'll get that after this slide. So what is financial wellness? So we're going to start tying in all those concepts before we get into the calculations. So financial wellness can be described in a couple different ways, because we have different backgrounds, we have different cultures, different communities, different faiths, right? So what wellness is can be very different based on the individual. But basically, the philosopher, the psychology textbook brings it down to these four things, which is kind of control over your finances, capacity to absorb financial shock or adversity, the freedom to make choices and enjoy your life, and that you're on track to meet financial goals. I'd like to summarize this a little bit more succinctly, but I think all financial wellness comes down to only two things. And it comes down to capacity for the bad and opportunity for the good. I think every human being, no matter what culture, what country, what language you speak, where you're from, I think that every human being can achieve financial wellness as long as they have capacity for the bad and opportunity for the good. So there we go. Now we're at the calculations, right? So now we have all this intentionality, right? Now we have these decisions that we get to make on a day-to-day basis, every day, these micro decisions, right? So how are we supposed to turn this dollar and cent mentality that we're, socially conditioned from birth to treat in a certain way? And how do we change the way that we approach these thoughts? Well, and again, the first part is journaling, recognizing, acknowledging the thoughts, and then accepting and rejecting them, right? If I moved back to Japan, my Tsuchi budget would go right back to where it was, because I would still do it. I would still spend that much money, because that is something I have examined and I know aligns with my values, right? And so how do you make these values into dollars and cents? And so like I was saying, the capacity for the bad and opportunity for the good, this comes down to the value of your time and the value of opportunity. So we had a couple of responses about the value of your time, and everyone has their own kind of subjective way to do it. But when I'm working with clients, I find the easiest way to put a value on their time is to ask them what their least favorite chore is. So for me, it's the dishes. And I hate it, I absolutely hate it. And I would definitely pay someone to do it for me, no questions asked. And I would pay them $25 to get it done. And I imagine it would take them 30 minutes on average. So I value my time at $50 an hour. That's how much I'm willing to pay to buy my time back so that I can use it in a way that I see fit, right? And here's the thing is, when people are trying to put value on their time, the first block or the first obstacle that they're going to come across is this weird little shame, right? Saying, oh, well, I can do it. I'm capable of doing it. I should do it. I shouldn't be paying someone else to do it when I'm capable of doing it. But here's the thing is, if they can do it quicker and they do it for cheaper than you value your own time, why wouldn't you outsource it? Why wouldn't you buy your time back, right? That time is precious. You can't trade any other currency for it. So if someone gave you the opportunity to trade currency for time, why wouldn't you take it? But the thing is, if you don't know how you value your time, you'll never know what to trade it for, and you'll never know when the cost is too high. So I wouldn't say outsource everything in your life unless you have that luxury, but to know what's worth outsourcing and what isn't, so that you can have that peace of mind and your time back is amazing, right? It ripples into every other aspect of your life when you no longer have to put up with things that you don't value in your life. And then the second thing that you can start quantifying, right, is the value of opportunity. And this one gets a little tricky too, because how do you value the future? There's some, statistics-based stuff, but for me, what I do is I take my risk tolerance and I calculate what I can turn a dollar into. So for me, I have a very high risk tolerance. I'm a financial planner. I know a lot. So my risk tolerance is high just because of everything I've studied. And so I can turn a dollar into $13 and change by the time I reach retirement. That's 20 something years from now. So when I make a decision every day, right, I can decide, do I want the thing? Do I want to make this purchase? Or do I want X amount in my retirement account? So most often this decision comes down to a snack. So I can ask myself, do I want to buy this snack? Or do I want $13 in my retirement account? But here's the thing. Sometimes a snack is going to keep me out of jail, right? So sometimes I'm going to pick that snack, even though $13 in my retirement account would be great. But I've got to make it to retirement to use that money, right? And so understanding the opportunity cost, understanding what I'm trading and when I'm trading it, right? I can make these little decisions today. And also I can remove the shame from making those decisions, because if you're spending a lot of money today, but you're just not sure how things are going to work out in retirement, you're going to feel either better or worse than the actual situation. Either way, it won't be correct. And so by being able to make these little decisions day in and day out, you can actually align these decisions with your life. Am I gonna spend that much on a sushi, or do I want several $1,000s in my retirement account, right? You get to make those decisions because they're about your values. And I get to make them because they're about mine. But the thing is, ignorance is the enemy, not the shame of deciding whether or not to make a purchase or not. It's the unknown, the things that you're not taking into account of. Because ultimately, the person you really do need to be looking out for is that future you, right? So I often talk about sober Megan and drunk Megan have really great relationship because they care about each other, right? And sober Megan becomes future Megan after drunk Megan, right? And so sober Megan, she leaves out ibuprofen, she leaves water by the bed. Like she makes it easy so that when drunk Megan comes home, she's fed, she's watered, and the likelihood of her having a hangover is lessened, right? And so I look out for my future self. And you also want to look out for that future self, that person in retirement, that person you end up growing into being, right? And I don't know about you, but as I get older, I like myself more. So I'm looking forward to meeting that person, but I really, really, really want her to have a really good quality of life. So I have to set out that ibuprofen and set out that water and set her up for success. And I can do that by bringing awareness into my decisions today. Because if I do not bring that awareness into my decisions today, I might be screwing her over big time, right? I have to think about both of us. So how do I know when I'm financially well? Very few people will raise up their hand and be like, yep, I got it. I got financial wellness right here. I am A-okay. And it's because of a couple of reasons, but it is actually hard to quantify. And so with the financial wellness program we created with the financial advocacy movement, we measure 5 numbers, but today we're going to cover 4. But the fifth one is the one I'm going to talk about right now. It's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's Wellness Assessment Survey. And so I did not create that. That was a government survey and research backed by, psychology researchers. Like, there's a lot of stuff there, and I don't want to take credit. So that's why it's not in this presentation. But if you are looking for a qualitative way to measure your financial wellness, that is a great way to measure it. And it's going to ask you questions like, I feel in control of your finances, true or false, or feel in control of our finances, true or false. I feel that once I make a little bit more money, I will have control. Like, they're very qualitative questions. But again, because I didn't create it, don't want to take credit, but I do want to let people know it's a really great resource for figuring out how you know when you're financially well. But for the other four, we have just real easy division for you. Okay, actually, I'll go back to the first one so I can announce all of them. So it comes down to 4 calculations: your emergency number, your grief number, your freedom number, and your respite number. And so your grief and emergency number, that's your capacity for the bad. So the emergency number, that's a lot of people know about this. So this is how long you could survive if there were an emergency, or how long you could weather adversity. So sometimes that's, loss of a job, or it could be death or dismemberment, disability. It could be any number of things, even just a relocation, right? But the amount of time you could handle adversity is something that will affect your financial wellness, right? The other one is your grief number. And this is where we're going to get to the most heated part of the conversation. So you'll bear with me. So a lot of people, they wish that when they pass, that their family would not grieve for them, right? So that's a good intention, right? I don't want my family to sit there and weep for me and not move on with their lives. I want them to move on. But this thought, right, tends to block people from insurance planning and risk planning, right? Oh, I don't need insurance. I don't want to think about it. I just want them to move on with their lives. They shut down the conversation. But here's the thing. If you don't have insurance or some sort of risk mitigation system, if something happens to you, you are not giving your family the opportunity to grieve. So it's not that you don't want them to grieve. You're not even letting them. You are making sure that if you die, they better get to work, in that amount of time. If you don't have insurance, but it's going to be pretty soon. And they got to take all that grief with them to work and suck it up and do whatever it is to replace your income. If you're in a coma, they're going to have to go to work. And you better hope that that nurse who's underpaid and overworked is going to look out for you, because your family won't be there at the hospital to be able to take care of you, right? So it's a very easy thing to push out of your mind because no one wants to think about getting hurt or dying. But you are setting yourself for absolute failure if you do not take risk assessment and insurance seriously. The way I like to put it is having insurance or having a risk plan, because it's not always insurance. You could be self-insured. But having that in place is like nailing a Monopoly table to the floor. Because I'll tell you what, every single financial plan, it's like flipping that Monopoly table. Just if there's a death, dismemberment, or disability, and you're not prepared for it. It didn't matter what you planned for. You could have the best intentions, all of them down the tubes, just because of one little bit of risk mitigation that you didn't address. So that'll be the end of my strong opinion on that. But insurance and risk management is one of the most important things you can do for your family. Because when they're dealing with grieving you and they're in this fog and they can barely human themselves, they won't be able to deal with the fact that they're in this complete financial mess. And they won't be able to afford to get help. And the situation is just, it's awful. And I would hate for you to purposefully do that to your family. So your grief number is how long you're giving your family to grieve for you, or how long they could live off the proceeds or whatever you have put aside for that risk. So it could be, it could be whatever number you want. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be the rest of their life. But ultimately, you need to intentionally give them the time to grieve and make plans for that. So the other 2 numbers, the freedom number and the respite number. So this is the opportunity for good, right? So the respite number, also known as the retirement number. I don't like the word retirement because I just don't feel like I'm ever going to stop working. I'll probably volunteer, or I'll work when I want to work, right? So for me, it's a respite number. It's the amount of time that I can dedicate 100% of my time to self-care if I want, right? And so that amount of time could be, you know, it could be retirement, it could be traveling the world, it could be whatever. But it's the amount of time I know I have where I can just be me, 100% me, and have my expenses covered and do only the things that I enjoy. And then the last number is the financial freedom number. So the financial freedom number is you take everything that you own, right? All your net worth, and you see how long you could live on that amount, right? And when that number, whatever that is, becomes larger than your life expectancy or what's left of it, then you have financial freedom, right? When you actually have enough that you could live off everything to the end of your days, you don't have to work, right? And ultimately, financial wellness, if you got to your financial freedom number, like that's all anyone ever needs, to not have to work, to not have to make decisions or give in to societal pressures, right? To be able to do what we want with the freedom that we want and the time that we want, you know, be able to buy more of our time back, right? And so these four numbers, they're a very easy division. And in fact, so the next slides are going to just go through the very simple process of, yeah, just divide what you have in these categories by your annual expenses and see how long you could live off of it. Because here's the thing is, yes, these are financial numbers, these are dollars and cents, but now they've been transformed into time, right? Because a dollar doesn't mean anything to me other than toilet paper. But having 5 years when I don't have to work a job, that means something to me. To know I never have to work again, that means something to me. I don't need all that toilet paper, right? Like that doesn't mean anything other, I mean, maybe in the apocalypse, but still, like, I need this to be translated in a way that actually reflects my human side, you know, my humanism, my human becoming, right? And maybe not my human being. And so the years is the way that we need to reframe our thoughts in money if we want to become financially well. So we'll go through all these really easy division. All right, okay. And so now, how do I know when I am financially well? So we've gone through all this and we've thought about our thoughts and our intentions, right? And at this point, you would think, hey, maybe I'd have an answer for you. But the unfortunate part is I will never have an answer for you. You will have an answer for you, but I will never have one. Because ultimately, whether or not you're financially well comes down to how much or how you feel about the numbers you calculated. Is your emergency number big enough? Only you can decide. Is your grief number big enough? Only you can decide, right? These are your values, and maybe maybe you don't want anyone to be there at your bedside in a coma, right? But that's your values. You get to decide that. But ultimately, it's better to intentionally decide that, right? Decide that it's your values and you want it to be this way, not that you're just ignoring all the other consequences or all the other possibilities simply because you have one set of expectations based on what society has prescribed, right? So only you can tell whether or not you're financially well. But I will say that it's very likely that you will achieve financial wellness the better those numbers are and the better your CFPB financial wellness score is, right? So you can say things like, I feel in control of my finances. I could handle a major unexpected expense. If there was a birthday, a wedding, or something that wasn't planned for, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable coming out of pocket for something like that, right? It wouldn't put a stress on my finances. But so again, I can't say whether or not you're financially well, but these are the kinds of things that are going to get you down that path. And ultimately, your values are going to start informing what it is that you want, right? And do you want these numbers to be better or worse? Or if there's a number that perhaps you've calculated that I'm not aware of, right? There might be a value in your system that you're going to track a different set of variables to make sure you're financially well. And so ultimately, when it comes down to is, yeah, this is about you, right? Are you reflecting the values that you have set forth, that you have put out into the ether, right? Or are you kind of letting them dissipate because you're not following up with action? Because ultimately, if you do not like where you are right now, you either have to change your behavior or you have to change your expectations. Not doing either is just going to make you unhappy, right? It's going to keep you in this place where you don't even see your blind spots, right? So you have to really evaluate, and it's not even for me to judge. And ultimately, you don't have to judge. You should acknowledge, right? Acknowledge this is what I'm doing and I don't want it anymore. I don't have to take that personally. I get to just change it, right? You can just become better at the things you want to become better at. You don't have to stay stuck in the scripts that are saying, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at budgeting, or I spend too much this way, or I'm frivolous in buying the designer purse, right? Those are scripts that you are creating. No one is creating them for you, and you get to change them, which is the best part, right? You don't have to have a judgy Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder, right? You get to make that be the personality that you want, but it doesn't start unless you have intentionality and you know what the goal is. Because if you don't have a goal, like if you plan for nothing, why would you be surprised if it's nothing that you receive, right? So you have to start. I mean, it sounds so easy. Oh, it's journaling. That's so easy. But the fact that you write it down, the fact you take the time and you actually take the time for yourself to show yourself that you care about your own values, that's going to be the only way you're going to actually get to where you need to go. So I think, right, so this is the end of our presentation. There's 2 QR codes. One is for the survey, just because every time I do this, I try to make it better, which is why I'm standing up today. Actually, it's made it tremendously better, but I can't get better unless I get feedback from people like you. So there is an incentive. I do give freebies away just for the 5 minutes of your time to take the survey. So I ask you to please take that. And then if you'd like to hear more about this, I don't shut up about this. If you get to know me, you'll kind of learn that. So I talk a lot about this on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about this when I volunteer for the financial advocacy movement. And so I invite you to follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm loving having these conversations, and I cannot wait to get financial wellness in the workplace, which is our new big initiative. And so we're really excited about those programs. So again, I encourage everyone to come and chat me up on these topics, because I do love talking about them. So I'll go ahead and stop the presentation there, and we can do questions or anything you guys want to talk about, because this is about you. So
I love that, Megan. Thank you so much. What great content that you provided. Just giving so much value to what our money is, right? Just having that different mindset and that shift in how you think about money is so important. I'd love to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions, you can either come off mute and ask your question. Just use your reaction icon to raise your hand, and you can ask your question, or pop it into a chat and we can ask it live. Again, Megan has a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and I do recommend taking time to get to know her, schedule a meeting. They are always great conversations. I think we usually schedule like 30 minutes, and like 90 minutes later, we're still talking. So it is a wealth of information. I have learned so much in our conversations, and just really excited. So I'll stop there for a second. Does anybody have any questions or want to ask questions? Anything clarified? There was some, I know, technical information in there.
who wants me to calculate their opportunity cost number? I can do that.
Yeah.
You know, that $13 I was talking about? I'll tell you what, I'm going to put it in the chat. Ooh. So I'm going to stop video for a second.
While you're doing that, Megan, too, I do have a question. What was the survey that you had mentioned, the qualitative survey? We'll send that link out. So if people are interested in taking that, we'll send that with the information.
Gotcha. Yeah. Let me get the.
And we'll send a follow-up email that'll have Megan's contact information as well. So again, follow up. And don't be shy, pop your questions in the chat if you have any questions.
It won't let me give the worksheet onto the chat, I imagine, is where I'd put it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll send it by email, and then people who get the slides can get it, but it shows it actually calculates you for you. And it's a very simple growth calculator. So it's, yeah, it'll be in the slides. So I did the calculations for you and put it on a table. So that can be really helpful because knowing what your number is can be crazy. Like an 18-year-old who has like the rest of their lives to save up, sometimes their number is like $35. Like they could have a Tinder date or have $3,500 in their retirement account. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy the way that can add up over time. So that's a really good number that I like giving people because yeah, it's a great thing to inform yourself every time that you're making a decision. Yeah, make a quality decision. Like I'm still gonna choose sushi. So,
I think as we talked about though, it's that like once you know, right? Like it's that guilt, not guilt of like, I know that I could be doing this, but it's just making a more smart decision at the end of the day. Do you have any recommendations on best places to save your money or where to put your money so that it does?
so one of the best tricks I've had to keeping my money saved, because that's the thing, right? The hardest part, because you can put money in your account and then you need it. And so you get it out. Name it. Name your accounts the thing. So like your vacation account, because then when you pull from your vacation account, you have to say to yourself, I am taking this away from my vacation, right? You are acknowledging the opportunity cost. And so try to fit in those kinds of things like, how do I make it so that I understand what I'm trading, right? So naming your bank accounts. There's places where you can get like decent rates of return, and that's the financial planner side of me kind of coming out. But ultimately, I think it's more important for you to create a habit of leaving it there. That's going to pay off way longer. Like the rate of return is going to be way higher than having an extra 1% rate of return in normal ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. So that way, because you're right. Like so many people are like, oh, I'm going to save my money and then automatically get afraid and pull it right back out. So I love that tip. Brandy asks, what app do you have any app recommendations for tracking money?
So I have heard good things about You Need a Budget, but I have not yet myself tried. I am fortunate because I have access to high-level financial planning software. So I would recommend that, but that's not accessible to everybody. But we are starting to make it that way. So it's not out yet, but I've been working with the financial advocacy movement to try to get the software to people who don't have access to it because they don't have, licenses for investment advice. So I would say that for ones that I'm kind of familiar with, You Need a Budget, I've heard good things about, but I'm going to be excited about for the one that we're hopefully going to get in place soon, which is it's going to be using Right Capital, if you're familiar, but that's a high level. It can do budgeting, it can do Monte Carlo analyses, and it's a lot of tools that just take the calculations out, because the calculations take a long time, especially when they're recursive and based on statistics, which a lot of money things are. If money were based on calculus, it'd be a lot more straightforward, but money's based on statistics and economics, which is not a good math. But
so much goes into it. I think it's just a matter of don't be afraid of money, right? I think we're taught, especially as women, we're taught a lot of times to fear money and to not really be close to it. I'll promote here, the Pledgettes is a great community to get engaged with, who is a community of women who are learning financial empowerment for women. And I think it's just that matter of taking ownership of every dollar that comes into your life.
It's so important. And I like to say, so it's supposed to be rude to talk about money, to talk about politics, to talk about religion, right? But here's the thing. If we don't start talking about money, the only place that it'll have it is politics and religion. You know what I mean? We need to have these conversations. It's not rude. It's money. It's the way that we are walking through the world, right? Be you, be authentically you. And that includes money, right? You shouldn't have to hide that just because society said it's rude. It's so weird. It is. Because how else are you supposed to learn? So
yeah, I love that so much. So talking about money, since it's Valentine's Day and we're learning as individuals to love our money, any tips about how do you have that conversation if you're in a partnership, to talk about if you're investing into yourself and learning about money, how do you bring those conversations about so that your family or household can do it together?
So this is a good question because it's not an easy answer. And here's the thing is, spenders and savers tend to find each other. I don't know why, but it's like yin yang, it's balancing for some reason. And so these conversations can get bad. I'll be honest, like people have emotions, and these discussions get very personal, right? Especially because you don't know what your spouse's money scripts are saying, right? And they could be talking, they could be saying all kinds of things that you're just not aware of, right? Or things that just don't even make sense, but because they're not saying it outwardly, they're not talking about money or their beliefs, you wouldn't know it, and you don't know what's informing them. So getting a financial counselor can be very helpful, because that will take the defensiveness away, right? Because the thing is, it's like trying to teach your spouse to drive a manual, right? That's just going to be, that's because of the nature of a relationship, it's going to be harder than it needs to be, because everything's going to be extra personal because of the nature of that relationship. So having a third party who's just going to ask questions and kind of simmer down that defensiveness can be very helpful. I always recommend it before you get married or before you make a big financial decision jointly. So like, even if you're not going to get married, but you're going to buy a house together, you really do need to understand how they like to spend, what their money scripts are, and those sorts of things. So I usually recommend, like, if you're going to get married, that's a great time to start having these conversations before you join finances. Because I'll tell you what, if you're not on the same page about these things, you will get divorced. There's no doubts about that. Because a spender to a saver is life-threatening, right? If you are literally threatening my livelihood, right? So it doesn't seem like much in the beginning, and you guys kind of can work around it for a while, but it's super important to have these discussions. And if you can initiate it, that's great, without getting defensive. But I have yet to see that. Even when it's just like planning, like, let's do a budget together. There's a lot of hostility with that too. And that's simple, right? Or like, let's plan a vacation. Sometimes you can't even get your spouse to help you with that, because they're not that's not their mindset. They don't like the planning. They don't like the details, right? Sometimes they're big picture people or detail oriented people. But the difference is, you have to get to a point where you're either going to be okay with the differences, or you're going to figure out a way to either leave the relationship or adjust someone's expectation, right? Because they can't all live in the same space. Eventually, it will cause divorce. It might take a long time, though, unfortunately. And some people, so it takes a long time to bounce back. It's going to be the nice way I'm going to say it. So it's a good question, but it's hard to do on your own. I don't actually recommend doing it on your own.
I love that. Thank you. I think it's also the point of, like, again, being confident and having that confidence to start that conversation, and being willing to sit down and say, we need to talk about this. We just started, a little tip from us is, we just started in our house, every first Saturday of the month, we go and get breakfast together, and we sit down and talk about what our goals are for the month and where our budget is and where we're spending, where we can cut. And we just try to keep very open-minded to where our money is going and how we're spending it, so that we can save for our future as well. So, and it's hard, you're right, but you have to bring those conversations about. So last question that I have is, what do you see for the future of sustainability? Your magic, look into your magic crystal ball, and what kind of do you see as that future?
Well, so this is getting into the financial planning side, because that's what makes me super excited. So sustainability and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So they are technically separate, but in my mind, they overlap, because sustainability is a way of looking at things. It's a way of approaching economics, a way of approaching the planet, really. And so how do we start making things sustainable when we're all individuals who do different things and work in different jobs and that sort of thing? And so even the UN is having a hard time trying to figure out, like, how do we measure things? How do we standardize? How do we give guidance on companies that are trying to do better things, right? And they don't have a perfect solution yet. But here's the thing is, it's not easy. Like, so for an investment firm, we do all kinds of things because we can literally invest in those companies, right? So we can invest in solar and say that we're supporting solar. So we're unique in that way, where it's like, literally, we can just have our money do the sustainability by putting it in the right places. But when you have a business or you are an individual, right? How does that work when it's not like you could just, money can't be the solution, right? You actually have to do the action. You have to clean up the rivers, or you have to not lend your money to set the ocean on fire. And so it's an undereducated field, I will say. Most people don't even know what I do. Most people don't know I can make your portfolio look like your electoral ballot, or I can make your portfolio amplify the what you do in your charity, or the kind of work that you volunteer for. People don't know it exists. And so the future of sustainability, I think, is really bright. But right now we're in an education phase where we're telling people, hey, did you know you could do this? Hey, you know, this is the way we've always done it, but it doesn't have to be. But the only way we're going to do that is by making it contagious, right? And telling other people and having people, whether it's self-reflection. And you probably have already done that self-reflection. You probably have thought about recycling. That's sustainability. You probably thought about your energy usage at some point. That's sustainability, right? How do I be a responsible human on this planet? That's the beginning of sustainability, right? As an individual unit. And then we can apply that to, you know, a company or a state or a country or the whole planet, right? On those different levels. So right now, yeah, it's transformative. We're going through this transformation period where we're figuring out, how do we standardize? How do we measure? And how do we make it so that we're all going towards the same goals? Because a lot of us are going very similarly, but we're not defining it, right? And so we're haphazardly going through, and we're doing better, but we're not reaching any particular goal. So I think it's like the beginning, right? We're in the early stages where we get to define the words. We get to be excited because we're going to be creating the things that are going to show up in this industry. So yeah, I want to say, in my opinion, it's young, but there's so much that's going to be done in this field, and it applies to everything, no matter what kind of company you work for. Sustainability and personal responsibility and planet responsibility is not going away unless somehow we leave the planet, but still, I don't think so.
I love it. I love make it contagious, and you sure make it contagious. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. Please help me give a warm thank you to Megan. Thank you so much. On behalf of Women in Sustainability, as a thank you, we will be planting 5 trees in your name through One Tree Planted. You'll receive a certificate with information about those trees. Just thank you so much for your passion and your excitement around this topic. And again, for spending the day with us. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for contending with the tech issues that we had. I really appreciate the patience and the grace with that. And I hope everybody has a great day. If you're in Colorado, stay warm as that storm moves in. And we look forward to seeing you soon. womeninsustainability.org for all of our upcoming events. We have conversations like this all the time. I would love for you to be a part of those conversations in the future as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Megan.
And I look forward to anyone who wants to reach out. I love talking about this stuff. So.